I am sickened, and I wonder when and if this onslaught against innocent Asian Americans will ever end. And I mention this, however, I must say it out loud that I know many Asian Americans across the country are what they're thinking when they see violence against someone who looks like us. And that is, this could happen to me. This could happen to my parents. This could happen to my children. And that alone is terrifying. And when people question whether the 6 Asian women in Atlanta were targeted for their race, I find that appalling given what we've witnessed. And my hope is that we not only honor those women on the 1-year anniversary of their deaths, we honor all individuals who were targeted and attacked because of the color of their skin. My hope is that we move forcefully and in droves to change this. We can make this change in a number of ways. We can do so by telling the stories of the women we remember today, who were daughters, aunts, wives, mothers, sisters. Because in doing so, we're showing that their experience, their existence mattered. We can do this by supporting the families of victims through sustained investment and resources, by providing safe space for BIPOCs, by providing strict anti-hate legislation. We can do this by promoting peace and healing and understanding. So today, I implore all of us to be engaged and present, to be actively involved, to use our voices, because it will take all of us to create a meaningful change. And before I introduce our next esteemed speaker, I must mention that we can't talk about hate crimes and senseless killings without mentioning and talking about Vincent Chin, who was a young Asian American man who was beaten to death right here in Detroit in the early 1980s. And this year marks the 40th anniversary of his death, which was pivotal in sparking a massive Asian American activist movement in this country, and a call for a stronger federal hate crime legislation. So towards the end of our program here today, we'll be highlighting activities that will take place to honor his memory later in the year, and I invite all of you to participate in them. So once again, I thank you all for being here today, and I'm going to take a pause before I get to introduce our next speaker, because it is such an honor for me to do so. I am so thrilled to be introducing our next speaker, U.S. Ambassador Katherine Tai. Ambassador Tai is the United States Trade Representative. As a member of President Biden's cabinet, she is the principal trade advisor, negotiator, and spokesperson of the U.S. trade policy. And we are so lucky that she took time out of her what I'm sure is an extremely busy schedule to come here and be with us today. Ambassador Tai.
Well, good morning, Detroit. I'm delighted and honored to be here with you today, though I have to tell you, I was not prepared for the Michigan morning cold. This is betraying my own roots as a mid-Atlantic Asian American. But I've zipped up here, and I want to begin by thanking Rebecca and APIA Vote Michigan for inviting me to join you on this extremely important day for our community. It's great to be back in Michigan, and on behalf of President Biden and our entire administration, I want to thank all of you for the important work that you are doing to lift up the voices of Asian women and bring attention and awareness to the challenges that we face. We gather today to mark 2 tragic events that span 4 decades. 1 year ago, Delana Yan, Paul Michaels, Xiao Jie-tan, Dao Yo-feng, Sun Cha Kim, Hyun Jung Grant, Sun Chung Park, and Yong Ai-yue were murdered in Atlanta. My thoughts, like all of yours, are with their families, friends, colleagues, and also with the loved ones of members of our community who have lost their lives to senseless, hateful violence. At the same time, the memory of Vincent Chin is always in my thoughts. His name has always carried significant weight in our community, but especially here in Michigan as we approach the 40th anniversary of his murder. These acts of violence across multiple generations is a reminder that anti-Asian hate is not new. It is the source of deep anxiety and pain that keeps many of us up at night in fear, as Rebecca said, for ourselves, our parents, our neighbors, and our loved ones. Throughout the pandemic, the constant presence of violence and bigotry directed at our community have been overwhelming, but again, they are not new. Many, if not all of us, have faced ugly stereotypes throughout our lives. For Asian women in particular, the sense of community is vital. We must remember we are not alone in combating the disproportionate sexism and violence that is directed towards us. And that is why this vigil is so important. Our solidarity reinforces that acts of racism and violence against women are unacceptable. It sends the message that these acts of violence do not define our communities. It shows that you cannot pit us against each other, you cannot push us into the shadows, and it shows our collective determination that these forces will not, must not succeed. Before I go on, I do want to take you back to where I was in my own journey 1 year ago, awaiting a confirmation vote on my nomination to be the United States Trade Representative. While preparing to take on this job, I was also deeply shaken by the violence, hate, and pain targeted at the AAPI community. But I also want you to know that I observed with great pride the strength demonstrated as our community also stood up and rallied. The tragedy of the horrific day from last year was still very raw just 2 days later when I was sworn in as the first Asian American to hold my position by Vice President Harris, the first Black and Asian American woman to hold her office. A few months later, I proudly joined my colleague, HHS Secretary Javier Becerra, to co-chair at the White House Initiative and the Presidential Advisory Commission on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. This whole of government initiative and our amazing commissioners will help advance equity and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities while creating a network that can support and lift up one another. Our work is hard, but critical, and we will need all of your support and guidance. I want to be very honest with you. Moving from the trenches to the front line is new for me. I've honed my skills across my career as a trade negotiator and a trade lawyer, largely behind the scenes, striving to create trade policy that respects human dignity and supports workers. As the chief trade policy spokesperson and negotiator for the United States now, I believe that we, as Americans, have a great opportunity to advance inclusive economic policies that lifts all boats and leads to greater prosperity. And that is why I am especially proud to represent an administration that has, for the first time in history, put racial and gender equity at the center of its agenda. So even as we continue to mourn the lives lost and forever altered, this vigil gives us hope. We can heal as a unified community and create a network of empathy and support. We must remind ourselves that we are not alone in combating these challenges. As Yuri Kochiyama advised, we are all part of one another. As an Asian American woman serving at the highest level of government, I feel a personal duty and responsibility to the victims, their loved ones, and our communities to respond to both the moment and the mandate. And as I join you on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, I am inspired by the resilience in each one of you. And I am so proud to stand alongside you as a partner, an advocate, and an ally. In this somber moment, remember that we are always working to perfect our union, to make it more tolerant and just. The work and strength represented here today is proof that we are resilient and that progress is possible. Thank you all so much.
Ambassador Tai, we are proud to be standing alongside you as your partner as well as an ally. We are so pleased that the President Biden cabinet has put racial and gender equity at the center of his administrative agenda. As you know, we need this level of support from highest level of government to address issues as systematic as these. Our community is proud and fortunate to have you as our ambassador, as the esteemed representative of our community. Thank you. And at this time, I would like to introduce Aisha Benghazi, who is the chair of MAPAC Commission. Aisha Ghazi.
Hi everyone. So I'm Aisha Benghazi Edwin. I'm actually the first female Asian American chair ever of the Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission, which represents a diverse group of Asian American community leaders appointed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer to advise the legislature on API issues that affect our community and to represent our community needs. We were, as a community, collectively appalled, traumatized, and scared when we heard about the Atlanta shooting. We heard our elected officials call the pandemic the China flu, and then after 6 Asian American women were brutally shot and killed, turn around and say that this was not a hate crime. But it was a hate crime. And unfortunately, Asian American hate is part of American history. But we are also part of American history. We have helped to build this country. And we've been here in these moments before. From Japanese internment, to Chinese exclusion, to Vincent Chin, to the aftermath of 9/11, and to this horrific pandemic. And we've also overcome moments like this before. We've mobilized ourselves and advocated for ourselves and continue to advocate for ourselves now, without leaving any one of us behind. Because we are the largest and most diverse ethnic group on the planet, and we're stronger together. So we must keep moving forward while demanding that society acknowledge the diversity among us, to desegregate our data, to fight back against the model minority myth, to fight anti-Blackness within our own community, to stand up for workers' rights, to fight against the fetishization of Asian American women, and to fight against senseless acts of gun violence like this one. We stand together and we fight back now and in the future, stronger because we fight together. I want to thank you, API Vote Michigan, and all the other co-sponsoring organizations for coordinating events like this. I want to thank Rebecca Islam and other organizers who bring our diverse community together during such important moments. And next up, I'd like to introduce Kelly Garrett, State Director of Care and Action, Domestic Workers. Thank you.
Is it still morning time? I think so. Well, good morning. And I am from Michigan, but I am freezing out here. I want to thank you all for coming here. And I was thinking of all the things that I wanted to say. One, yes, I am the state director for Care and Action, but I'm also the first Black mayor of Lathrop Village here in Michigan. That within itself has been very interesting. I've been the mayor for the last 5 years. When I was first elected, my house was egged, my garage was spray painted. So when people tell me that we don't have a issue with race and that we can overcome this and people have overcome all the racism, I know that personally not to be true. And as what was just spoken and said, that we're being traumatized, that seems to be our new word. seems to be my new word that I say quite often every time I turn on the news and find out that someone has been killed because of their skin. I'm very appreciative to be here, and it really makes me extremely sad that this is why we're here. We all are one, and if we all come together and work together, we can do such magnificent things. We are people of color. We did help build this country, and we should be respected that way. The one thing that I've always said to myself in the traumas and the dramas and everything that's going on in my life is the fact is that you should not let your traumas, your disappointments, and your hurts be what defines you. Let it be what refines you. Like a fine diner, deep in the dirt, has to be smoothed out, kind of buffed up, and you shine brightly. So let's take this time to show who we are and how we can change this country and how we can make some changes and how we will demand from our legislatures that they have a stronger hate bill in place, and that the results of someone having done a hate crime, that the punishment is intense and is long. We are here together, we live here together, and that's how we all should be together. Let's all work together to make sure that hate has no home here. And next up we have David Hahn, who's the Commissioner of the Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission.
Thank you. What a wonderful, powerful message. Thank you very much. So, I was here across the street a year ago, this day at the rally. And I'm back here again because the work that we were awakened to that day continues, and it must continue until we make substantial progress for all Americans, so that we can live up to the vision that we have for this beautiful country that we call our home. Today we remember the innocent lives lost in the Atlanta Spar shootings, including 6 Asian American women. Our prayers are with the families and for the affected communities like ours across America. I pray for healing of those who suffered the horrific loss personally, and for strength for them and for our communities to overcome the ongoing pain and fear that continue to grip and impact many of us, not just Asian Americans, but our friends and neighbors in our communities. And we are optimistic in spite of all of these challenges and hardships that we experience along the history, that we continue to stay resolved and take steps forward so that we can together make things better for the present and for the future. We pray for a kinder, more loving America, where we are considerate and accepting of those who are different than us and different than each other. And we pray that as Americans, we strive each day, like today, to do our part to help ensure that liberty, opportunity, equal justice, and belonging are common reality for all Americans, including those Asian and Pacific Islander of Asian and Pacific Islander heritage, and especially our vulnerable women and children who are often the subject of aggression in our communities and also in our schools. as American, just like you here and many others who are here, present or from a distance. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our ideals, we owe it to our present generation and to our future generation, and to continue to stand up for what is just, what is fair, and strive to be loving. I certainly am striving for that, and I know that my neighbors and friends and colleagues are all striving for the same things. So let's remember today and each day to stand up for one another, lift it up, and also hold accountable others to this ideal and standard that is what defines us as American and this land that we call our home. Thank you very much. Next up is Isra Dava Aish. Isra Dava Aish.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. That's the biggest struggle. So peace and good morning. My name is Isra Daraise. I'm a voter rights and democracy advocate by profession, and I'm a community organizer by nature. First, I want to recognize that we are in Detroit, which occupies the contemporary and ancestral homelands of 3 Anishinaabe nations of the Council of 3 Fires, the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. Detroit is also a majority black city, a city that has served as a refuge for people fleeing Jim Crow, war, and economic plight, where we have all found new communities to immigrate to, some of us by choice, others due to war, and we've come to live and work together and continue to fight for equity and fairness against all the odds. I'm appreciative of the efforts that APIA Vote Michigan, Rebecca Islam, and the partners have put forth, which is an opportunity for us to not only honor the 8 lives taken by xenophobia, which is the dislike or prejudice against people from other countries, but also the opportunity for us to address the big picture and the historical pattern of this kind of xenophobia in this country. To be honest, I struggled with how to convey my frustration with our current reality. War is on my mind. Structural and systemic root issues are on my mind. America's racism matches economic times that people are facing and also the countries that the US is fighting. As an immigrant from Asia and being an adolescent during the post-9/11 era in this country, I can resonate with how my Asian siblings are feeling. I immigrated to the US when I was 9 from Jordan. At the age of 11 years old, 9/11 happened, where the might of the US military was against my homelands. There was a correspondence of Islamophobia that arose in the US, while the foreign policies were being undertaken overseas. So when I think about the Atlanta shooting last year, I think about that little girl that found out and can only imagine the little girl sitting at a dinner table and finding out the horrific news, how thoughts ran through her mind about going to school the next day and having to face the potentially already existing discrimination she faced, how she mentally prepared for what to say or what to or who to stay near to feel safe in her own skin. I can resonate with that little girl because in so many ways I was that little girl. Being in 6th grade and watching the events take place on TV in civic class, feeling the shift in the room almost immediately, growing from home, having so many friends and loving going to school to being someone who dreaded it because of all the bias. For the last few decades, war has largely been confined to West Asia, where my family's from. Ever since President Obama's pivot to Asia, I think we'll see a lot more violence in the rest of Eurasia like we're seeing in Ukraine today and Yemen and so on. Because America's racism matches its foreign policy. This isn't the first time in America where there's been anti-Asian sentiment and hate and murder and internment camps. I mean, even in current day, the attacks have occurred in New York and California, all across the United States, not just in Atlanta. And often these things occur before and during war. If we want to make a difference in the world, we have to vote for peace. War is the opposite of us thriving. It's the opposite of us being able to pay for healthcare. It's the opposite of us being able to fix our roads. It's the opposite of us being able to love each other. These are the important things we should all be fighting for. Our quality of life, not spending money destroying and displacing people so they can come here, and most not by choice, as migrants, as refugees. We can talk about the individual racism here and the hate, but we can also talk about how broader geopolitical decisions hurt us all. Can you also imagine war? What are folks going to experience when they get here if it becomes a reality? Too often we attend a vigil or rally about defeating hate, and it focuses on individual issues and not enough about the root cause and structural systemic solutions. So I want us to think about both. I want us to fight our ways in our local communities, within our schools, our neighborhoods, our jobs, to think about how we can impact change, not just on the micro level, but on the macro level. We gotta stop Asian hate and defund war and fund a just transition, a Green New Deal, the work of mothers and women, and all of the things that allow us to thrive together. We gotta vote for something different than the status quo in this country, and that's why I love working with the organization I work with. I get to support the civic engagement and the voter rights and the democracy education efforts of community organizations fighting for their loved ones every single day. I'm grateful to be able to make a difference in that way. So in honor of the 8 lives from the community gone too soon, I stand here to use their memory for change and hope that we can impact the world we want to see, healthy, thriving, beautiful, sustainable, and loving. I want to thank you all for what you do in your community, for attending this vigil, for showing up, for expanding your mind to new possibilities because we can have a better world. Thank you so much. Peace. And I am delighted and honored to be able to introduce my sister, Sadie Sarr, who is the Commissioner of African Bureau for Immigration and Social Affairs. Give her a round of applause.
Give her a round of applause. Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Sadie. I am a commissioner with the Black Leadership Advisory Council that was created last year by Gretchen Whitmer. I'm also the founder of ABISA, which is the African Bureau for Immigration and Social Affairs. I would like to remind myself and remind all of us here that this union has never been perfect. That this union has spent its time othering its community members. That this union has strived in cheap labor, in free labor. That this union has ensured that different ethnicities was used and disposed. We talked about the internment camp. We talked about the Exclusion Act. We also have to remember that this union was built on somebody else's land, untitled land, that was disposed and taken away. And that this union had also used free labor of African slaves in order to put itself. So as we continue the same ethnicities pouring into this shore looking for a better tomorrow, because as Esther said, war and economic displacement is pushing our communities out of our natural habitat. We continue to fight with the hope that we will belong. And so many times in history, we were reminded that our skin, our accent, the way we speak, the way we pray, the way we love wasn't American enough. And our communities have joined so many other communities working hard to become what they are never going to be able to be, because their skin don't say so, because their food don't say so, because their language don't say so, because the way they pray and the way they love don't say so. So I want to give a moment to everybody who is here. I want to praise you for continuously being in the trenches and for continuously standing to remind that this union, that we are part of the fabric of the society, and that there will be no union unless we are seen, loved, cared for, respected, and that what we bring is being recognized. Because without the work of people like you, these instances are barely going to make it news. Because we know that for it to make news, it has to be blood, it has to be gore, it has to be painful, it has to be disheartening. And I don't believe that our communities deserve their humanities to be only acknowledged when it is that hurtful. And this union should do better. So I'm standing here as a Senegalese immigrant, repeating everything that was said before me, but understanding that for us, for anti-hate to happen, for anti-Islamophobia to happen, for anti-Semitism to happen, for anti-blackness to happen, is because we are organizing in silos. And when we continue to break those silos and organize as a group, as a human family that we are, this union is going to have to deal with all the anti-blackness, anti-Asian, anti-immigrant, anti-xenophobia, Islamophobic, and so on and so forth. So I'm just here to remind myself and all of us that we have great work to do and that we are all in this together and that you guys can count on me, and I hope that I can count on you when my community is going to be next in the news. So next I want to introduce Sina Wong and Zora Bowens of whenever we are needed. Because when this issue happened, they organically jumped and created the very first rally and asked for us to forget our silos and really address this. So please give them a round of applause.
We want women to feel comfortable no matter what, regardless of size, body count, occupation, gender, expression, religion, and especially race. To be a woman is one thing, but to be a woman of color is a whole other spectrum. It comes with havoc, self-hate, fetishism, and fear. But it also comes with style, grace, grit, and resilience. And damn, am I proud to be an Asian woman, a woman of color. We are more than our race, and that's something no one can ever take from us as much as we ourselves tried to erase that. I stand with my sisters of color, and I stand with my Asian sisters. We deserve justice, love, and respect. I'm Sina Vang, and I am the co-founder of Whenever We're Needed.
Hi everyone, I'm Zora Bowens, co-founder of WWN Whenever We're Needed. We are an intersectional activist group fighting for Asian, Black, and marginalized communities whenever we're needed. Some of you may recognize me from this past year, and I may be a new face to some of you. I stepped out onto the streets with Sina to protest against the Atlanta spa shootings that happened 1 year ago today, to stand against the disgusting murder of 8 people, 6 of them Asian women who had their lives ahead of them, and to speak out against all the moments that led up to these horrific murders in the wake of anti-Asian rhetoric that has fueled racism and xenophobia, that has fueled violence against my friends, their families, and their communities. Here we are a year later, and we have accomplished so much. But I know that it may feel like we haven't because we have lost many more Asian lives due to racism, many of them women. And you might be wondering, and we've talked about it here today, from the Japanese internment camps to yellow peril that our government created and instilled, to the tragic murder of Vincent Chin, to the recent brutal murder of Christina Lee, to all the attacks on Asian lives due to hatred instilled across various communities, Black, white, and Latino, and so forth, against Asian people by our government's history of spouting anti-Asian rhetoric for their benefit for centuries. When is this going to stop? As a Black woman, I want to say this. I know the feeling of hopelessness. Seeing more and more violence against my people every day, dreading watching the news in fear of seeing another Black person's life taken senselessly. And now I see Asian lives being taken day after day. I feel that pain, and I know that pain. Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Go ahead, girl. You got this. You got it. I love you.
But what I want to say is this. Day after day, I see a light. And it's us. It's us taking the system into our own hands and fighting for change. Changing legislation, getting into positions, important positions to transform our nation, from the ground level to the highest levels of government. It's us changing the perspective of ignorance and us challenging white supremacy. And when I say white supremacy, I don't just mean white people. I mean anyone who chooses to act as an agent of white supremacy, knowingly or unknowingly. Those who fall into a delusional state of superiority taught by our government's imperialistic nature, cowardice, and manipulation tactics, causing violent division based on skin color, background, or culture. Today, I stand here and I just want everyone to take a moment to look around at what we have. Really look around. We have strength. We have a voice. We have unity. We have a community that cares. We have allies, friends, family, neighbors, and strangers that care. That light that I see that allows me to fight for a better world, it's us. We are changing the world every single day. We are the light that will change the world for generations to come. So I just want you to remember that when times seem dark like they may now, light is on the horizon. Continue to fight and know that you have people by your side, like me, like Sina, like all of us, to fight with you, peacefully or unpeacefully. Thank you.
Stop Asian hate. The movement continues.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Lisa Gray. Lisa is the co-chair of the North American Chinese Coalition and an incredible person.
I could not believe I got introduced by these two sisters. I love you guys. Thank you so much. That reminds me last year we did the protest, we did the rally at Cross Creek with the APIA Vote Michigan and also other organizations. Good morning. My name is Lisa Gray and I'm representing North American Chinese Coalition, Michigan, Alliance of Chinese American Organizations. I'm the founder of Dragon Eagle TV, APIA News Network, with a mission to bridge AAPI community and the community at large. We mark 1 year since the attack in Atlanta, where 6 women of Asian descent were murdered. We were greatly saddened when this happened, but there have been more since then. We have seen a dramatic rise in anti-Asian speech and hate crime in the past few years. In order to end and reverse this trend, we need to attack where starts, which is acceptance. It's not acceptable to make nasty comments based on race, religion, or anything else that makes us different. Most hate incidents go unreported because of 2 reasons. One is culture. Most Asians are taught from an early age not to rock the boat. A second reason is law. It's not illegal to express a belief or attitude, no matter how ugly. Because it's not illegal, police have no way to officially report incidents. We need to change this, and it needs to start with government, community leaders, parents, and corporations. When we say something, we need to stand up and loudly say, no, that's not American way. We need to have proper report system to record incidents of hate speech. Corporations should do the same. A perfect example of need for the system is an incident in which we are working with the state to approach a large corporation to discuss about 2 employees verbally abused one of the ladies in our community. Hopefully, the company involved will
do the right thing and publicly apologize. Also, making sure employees understand that hurtful speech will not be accepted. Thank you so much for coming to support our community. United, we are strong. Thank you so much. It's my great honor to introduce you a next speaker. He's a friend of the community, Roberto Torres from City Detroit.
Yeah, me too. That's why I turned it.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Roberto Torres. I'm the Director of the Office of Immigrant Affairs and Economic Inclusion for the City of Detroit. First, I want to thank Rebecca for your invitation, your energy, for organizing this event, even to the extent of having the Ambassador Tai here with us this morning. It just goes to show the extent of your talent, and I appreciate that you bring us together. To all the presenters that spoke before me and those that will speak after, if there's one thing you taught us, it's that history teaches us all. As the saying goes, if we don't learn from history, history will tend to repeat itself. If there's anything that we've learned in the last 2 years, it's that science and a pandemic does not judge. It does not discriminate, and it does not show bias. Globally, all people and all communities were impacted by the pandemic. Yet we learned to overcome. We learned to overcome COVID through masking. We learned to distance. We got vaccinated. We learned to be better. In the past 2 years, we've also seen senseless attacks and abuse of our Asian American community. The Atlanta spa shooting is one in a series of senseless acts and senseless attacks. As we remember the innocent victims of March 16, 2021, let us overcome such hatred and racism by helping to educate one another, by seeking to understand the language and cultural differences, and by breaking barriers that divide our communities. We too must learn to be better. On behalf of the city, I want to say thank you. Thank you to our Asian American community. Because in the last 2 years, as we've been challenged by this pandemic, you responded. You responded by providing PPEs, over 20,000, to our first responders, our fire department, our police department, our hospital workers. You responded. I'll end by saying this. Stop Asian hate does indeed begin with each one of us. And so let us continue to gather. Let us continue to share the voices. Let us continue to speak up. This next gentleman that I'd like to introduce, I actually met him several years ago when we were first launching the census count. And even then, what we were asking our community is to step up and be counted. Our community was being attacked on a national level with rhetoric that was anti-immigrant. And so many of us went uncounted because of those experiences. So I'd like to have Bilal Hamoud come and join us. He's a candidate to run for state representative, and I'd like to give him a welcome and a round of applause. Bilal, my friend.
Thank you, Roberto. Good morning, Detroit. All right, that's some good energy. So, my name is Bilal Hamoud, and as Roberto said, I'm a candidate for state representative in the 15th district. It's one of the newly drawn districts that covers West Dearborn and Dearborn Heights. A really amazing community, about 40% Arab American, really just strong culture. But I wanted to say that, first of all, I want to thank APIA Vote, Rebecca Islam, and a lot of the work they've done. Whenever you see a strong vigil, a rally, a voter initiative, whatever it may be, to support this community, I know Rebecca's either in it or leading it. So I want to thank her. Honestly, you're doing great work, and I appreciate it. I also hope we can take a moment to acknowledge the lives lost, the APIA lives lost over this last year, and really think about what that means for us. What it means to lose someone that you care about, someone that holds a place in your heart. You know, with my work prior to this, I was with the Department of State and working alongside so many great folks under the administration of Jocelyn Benson. I was honored to be the first Arab American to ever be in that department. And, you know, with that work, we worked side by side with so many of these groups here today on identification accessibility, voter accessibility. And I mention that because today we've seen so many firsts. And that's an amazing thing, isn't it? To see the first of someone representing a community in a position of power, in a position where they can actually influence change. But you know what's even better than being the first? It's not being the last. It's creating that pathway so that others that are qualified can come after you, right? Others can follow in your footsteps, and you can create a network that works together to stand against hate, to stand in that place where you can impact real change. You know, as you may know, many Arab Americans face this issue of the lack of representation, and where that's most critical is at the census level. What that impacts has waves and waves of honestly devastating effects on education, on federal protections, on funding, on representation. So when we talk about being at the table and not being on the menu, it is so critically important that we compensate for that fact. A lot of the work that we did with the department was getting into these communities and working side by side with others who we knew weren't gonna have that voice at the table. And so who is it up to? It's up to us, each and every one of you here today, those tuning in digitally, to take that stand. You know, there's a story that you hear in a lot of faith circles and a lot of these circles that talks about standing up for others, but I'll summarize it. It basically goes that if you don't stand up for others, who's gonna stand up for you when there's no one left around you to stand up for you? Who's gonna fight for you if you have stopped fighting for others? And that really is part of that messaging that I think we need to carry with us. Last year, Senator Chang introduced anti-Asian hate legislation, and it passed, right? That was amazing, huge victory for us. And now there's legislation that stands against all hate, that stands against hate that impacts all of us. And I think that's something we should bring to the spotlight a little bit more so that we can push something like that through. It may seem like a resolution that doesn't have that, you know, direct impact, but it means a lot more in the long run. It means that there's a baseline that we can go off of that protects those around us, that stands for those around us and does not silence those around us, which is the most important thing there. So when I think of legislation like this, when I think of the impact that we really can have, it's because Detroit has no home for hate. There is no home for hate in Wayne County, and there is no home for hate here in Michigan. Is that right? I said, is that right? That's right. So I'm inspired to stand here with all my Asian American and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. I really hope that together we can carry that value of cultural humility. We can work together to bridge the gap. So thank you for having me here today. Up next, I'd like to introduce Peggy Du from the Association of Chinese Americans. Peggy, join us on the stage, please. There you are.
Good morning all. I'm Peggy Du, representing the Association of Chinese Americans. Today, we are here together to fight for justice, to remember the victims of the Atlanta shooting. Moreover, we're here to stand with the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, the AAPI community, to fight against violence and discriminations against the AAPI community. This past year has been challenging in our lives and in our shared history. Many of us have friends and family who have suffered from COVID-19 and the anti-Asian hate, mentally or physically, and some of them even lost their lives. We are going to remember the pain, but we are not going to let it slip in our hearts. COVID-19 has taught us a lesson on how close we are than we can imagine, and how important people should work together in fighting against our common enemy. ACA was established in 1972. Our mission is to advancing the social, educational, political, and economic well-being of the Chinese and APIA communities across the country. In our 50 years of existence, ACA has strived to fight for the general welfare of Chinese and the APIA community through our services and advocacy at our different service centers. So to celebrate our organization's 50 years service to the community, and in commemoration of Vincent Chin's 40 years anniversary, ACA is launching a unique art contest, Justice for All. Justice for All is open to all Michigan students from kindergarten to grade 12. Rooted in the value of providing students the respect and justice for all humanity, ACA aims to provide students from all cultural backgrounds a platform to express themselves and speak out in support of inclusion and diversity, tackling injustice, including educating young people about the harm injustice causes, must be a determined effort that engages every aspect of our society. ACA invites the students to raise their voices and share their ideas about what justice for all means and how we can better address the justice for everyone. At ACA, we respond to local needs and continue to seek ways to help the community, and we will keep doing so. Thank you, everyone. So next, my honor to introduce the speaker, Curtis Fernandez from APIA North Michigan.
Actually, at this point, you will hear from me later, but at this point, I would like to introduce our fellow friend and community organizer, Deepitha Das. Give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone, and Shubha Shakal. That's how you say good morning in Bangla. So thank you all for coming to this amazing event that APIA hosted, and our amazing queen, Rebecca Islam. Can we all get a round of applause for Rebecca? Where are you, Rebecca? All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Deepitha, and I'm a proud Bangladeshi immigrant. So my daddy, he immigrated to the U.S. because he got a chance with the diversity visa lottery, or known as a DV1. The U.S. started this system to allow other immigrants from smaller countries to come here. America originally wanted to be a country full of diversity, life, and various identities. But as soon as Asian Americans started to immigrate here, all of a sudden, they just couldn't handle the spice. They didn't know what to do with us. And we're like, hey, y'all wanted us here. And all of a sudden, you don't know how to treat us? What is this all about? And so today we are here in remembrance of the Atlanta shooting. Unfortunately, there has been a series of hate crimes towards our community, especially Asian American women. 1 in 10 AAPI women experience gender or race-based violence, which is one way too many. Back in November, the police department raided our very own 2 massage spas, leading to the arrest of 6 Asian women with a $50K plus bond, and documentation were confiscated. Why was the bond $50K? My 2 parents alone, they don't make $50K combined, and that $50K is supposed to support our family of 5. So how are these Asian American women supposed to rack up $50K to get them out. That's not fair. Our system needs to change and do better and support us immigrants. My parents and other immigrant families are the reason why America has cars. They're the ones who work in the in car factories and are getting exploited, but they're not getting acknowledged in various spaces. And so again, America, show us the love and respect that you showed us when you first indicated that you want us to immigrate here. Where is the American dream for us immigrants? Does it not apply to us as well? From the deportation of Asian American families to judges' anti-immigrant rhetoric in Hamtramck, our system needs to be better and needs to change. However, I am happy and super appreciative that we all are here today to acknowledge and honor what has happened so far and are motivated to continue changing our community and be better leaders for the future generations. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Lily Chang Shutling. She's a Democratic candidate for state representative.
Hello, thanks so much. So I am Lily Chang Schulting, and I am a Democratic candidate running for state representative in the newly redistricted and redrawn Michigan House District 80. And that is a suburb of West Michigan, or a suburb of Greater Grand Rapids. In 2020, I was the only elected Democratic nominee from West Michigan, who was also endorsed by U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. And as the People's Campaign, we were also the first Democrat in 27 years to flip the Kent County portion of our district. We have been a grassroots campaign for, of, and by the people. Now, before I discuss our unique campaign, I would like to share a picture of politics in West Michigan. First, the local leadership circle in both parties, or the gatekeepers, is currently consists only of a small group of white men. That means that the authentic, balanced, and diverse voice at the table where decisions are being made is currently missing in West Michigan. Where is the Asian American voice in West Michigan specifically? There have only been 2 Asian Americans leaders in politics in Greater Grand Rapids. There has been Bingoey and myself in different parties. But we both believe that the Asian American community does not have a voice or a strong voice in West Michigan. Although most Asian Americans in West Michigan are currently not as involved as they should be, or may likely even identify as Republicans, I am very grateful that the Asian American community and its leaders have embraced me through the years, even though I am a Democrat and as well as a progressive Democrat. We Asian Americans are family, and that's where we understand that. And no one will fight harder for our Asian American family than I will, as a proven Asian American woman advocate. So, and amid our society's deep racial, social, economic, and environmental problems, I am a proven disability advocate and a human rights organizer and a change maker. My top priority is to ensure a high quality of life for everyone in our district and in our entire state. I will truly listen to all views, and I will create meaningful, significant changes and significant solutions for all people. I believe that only a true activist at heart will sincerely listen to all your concerns, and only a proven change maker can create the solutions to address those concerns or problems. Since I created the movement which resulted in the landmark education case in Greater Grand Rapids, I believe I have the track record to get things done. My journey as a disability advocate started over 7 years ago when there were first cuts to my son's special education school. And I transformed my attorney abilities then to become a disability advocate. I created the Disability Aid Team of West Michigan and led the movement, which then resulted in 9 special education schools, changing management from just a single school district to the much larger Kent County ISD. And as a result, thousands of students, families, teachers have been very happy with additional per student funding with all sorts of resources from therapists of many kind to computer equipment and year-round school. In addition to my experience and skills, I am an immigrant who was born in Taiwan, and I came to this country as a toddler with my family. Since we have experienced prejudice, I never want anyone to experience prejudice, discrimination, or injustice of any kind. And I will fight fiercely for anyone of color or anyone who is vulnerable. And I will ensure that we have a balanced and diverse voice from West Michigan for Michigan. We are on the precipice of change. Now is the time for our families and our allies to fight white supremacy in West Michigan. We can win together. When we win, we will then create the solutions and the changes that we need. Please join me at lilyformichigan.com. Thank you. I am supposed to introduce the next person. It is Shanae Watson Whitaker. She is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Michigan Voices.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanae Watson Whitaker. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Michigan Voices, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca Islam and APIA Vote Michigan for having us here. APIA Vote Michigan is one of our partner organizations of Michigan Voices. We consider ourselves a backbone organization for not only APIA Vote, but Rising Voices, and you'll hear from them momentarily. Today we're here to recognize, to think about the victims of last year's tragedy, but we also should think about gun violence in the United States and what it does. I am the mother of 6 children, 4 girls, 2 boys, all adults, and the grandmother of 2 children, 6 weeks old and 3 years old. I think about the victims and their families as a woman. They were purposely targeted because they were women. They were purposely harmed because of who they are. And I think about their children as well. Think about them. Think about the violence that they experienced, the trauma they experienced in their lives. Think about what it means for not only them and their children, but the next generation as well. Really, when you see the news, you'll talk about the victims, you'll talk about the perpetrator, but you don't talk about the families and the trauma that they undergo. And then you talk about gun violence, and then next minute, it's gone by the wayside and it's all forgotten about. But yet the trauma is still there. So what do we do about it? We ask ourselves that question every single day. As people of color, as parents, do we sit on the sidelines and do we let this go by as another moment, or do we actually actively do something about it? So here's my call to action for you. Number one, you have to play your part in dismantling white supremacy. Number two, I recommend that we start teaching APIA history in our schools. Yes. Number three, stopping gun violence. We have to stop gun violence. It says a lot that people have to resort to using a gun to end disagreements or to cause devastation in our community. It starts with us. We have to connect with our legislators. We have to run for office. I see a couple of candidates out here. And we have to get involved. We got to hold our folks accountable, our leaders, elected officials accountable, because they're taking gun money. They're taking the money from the NRA. They're taking money from racist organizations and corporations that profit off of racism and hatred. We have to hold them accountable. Thank you so much, everyone. And next I want to bring up Regina Sang, my homegirl from Rising Voices. Come on, Regina.
I am Regina. I'm the field director for Rising Voices. We're an organization building power with Asian American women and youth in Michigan. Today, we honor the lives of the people that were taken from us too soon. We honor their loved ones. We honor the legacies they've left behind. We honor the Asian American people, Asian American women who deserve to feel safe. We are due our rights to liberty, to agency, security, and power, like everyone in America. But to claim this power, we have to talk about how we got here, how we have seen continued violence towards our community, how we have seen continued violence towards all Black and brown communities. Anti-Asian hate is not new. We've heard from all our speakers today. Racism did not come out of nowhere. It's what this country was founded on. The intergenerational trauma and discrimination we continue to face in our families and our communities are deeply rooted in a history of U.S. imperialism, a history and current reality of wars waged by the U.S. and its allies, wars on land, wars on our bodies, and on our very lives. We cannot continue to do the work necessary to keep our community safe without talking about this. We understand the pain, the fear that motivates our communities to call for increased policing, but more surveillance and more policing is not the answer. Multiracial solidarity is. The realization that we're all fighting the same system of white supremacy is the answer. Showing up, doing the work, fighting for all marginalized communities is the answer. I know I saw a hashtag earlier, maybe floating around, break the silence. The truth is, our communities haven't been silent. There are people who have paved paths, who are currently doing the work, we don't have to start anew. We have to work with organizations close to home, like Answer Detroit, who have fought for the decriminalization of sex work for years, and other collectives like Red Canary Song, who organize transnationally with migrant workers, with massage workers, with sex workers. When we grieve not only for those we have lost, but for those who are still living and criminalized, like the 6 women arrested in the Warren massage parlor raids just last November. Detroit's own Grace Lee Boggs said, "The only way to survive is by taking care of one another." Take a moment, take a breath, look around us right now. We're here to honor the lives lost a year ago in Atlanta. We honor those supporting themselves and their families through their labor, whatever that labor may be. We're here to honor ourselves and each other, our community's full humanity. We do that by continuing to do the work to show up for each other. Thank you so much for showing up today and for staying till the very end. Next, we have the esteemed Jim Shimura, co-founder of American Citizens for Justice.
All right, thank you. My name is Jim Shimura, and I'm very honored to be here today to say a few words about the Vincent Chin case, and also to remember the victims of the vicious, racially motivated murders in Atlanta 1 year ago. As an attorney who represented Mrs. Chin as a volunteer over the last 40 years, I'm very privileged to have a small part in the fight for justice for Vincent Chin. As you may recall, Vincent Chin was a 27-year-old Chinese American who was brutally beaten to death with a baseball bat for mistakenly being thought to be Japanese during the auto industry crisis in the early 1980s. The 2 murderers hunted them down, brutally struck them on the head several times with a baseball bat, and leaving him bleeding and dying in the streets of Highland Park. The group American Citizens for Justice was formed in response to Vincent Chin's killing. ACJ is a multi-ethnic, multiracial, international coalition that fights for justice for all people. And surprisingly, it was that unity and outcry that forced, of all people, Ronald Reagan, his Department of Justice, to prosecute the murderers for violating Vincent Chin's civil rights. We gathered today here at this remembrance of the victims of the Atlanta killings. Asian Pacific American women who were shot to death because of their race. The unbelievable suffering their families, friends, and the Atlanta community endured is heartbreaking and a national tragedy. Today's event creates a bridge between Vincent Chin and the Atlanta killings, as they are part of a legacy on how Asian Pacific Americans have been treated by American society over the last 140 years. Examples: the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, which made Chinese immigration illegal. Executive Order 9066, which placed American Japanese in concentration camps. And by the way, my mother and my grandparents and aunts and uncles were held in the camp out in Utah during the war. And then this bridges to today, where we have this modern day xenophobia with the crisis in the auto industry in the early 80s. And now, in 2022, we're targeted once again because of white nationalism, being scapegoated for the COVID pandemic, and being blamed for the U.S.-China trade war. All of these events are tied together because of APAs not being viewed as part of American mainstream. The same factors existed in the 1800s with the Exclusion Act still exist today. In many ways, we're on hallowed ground here, and the remembrance is at the center of the anti-hate movement. It started here 40 years ago. Coincidentally, just to let you know, Vincent Chin was killed a few miles up the street here on Woodward Avenue. The courtroom where his 2 murderers were given probation and $3,000 fine and no time in prison was held in this building across the street here in the courthouse for Wayne County. The first public rally for any Asian American group in Michigan was held in Kennedy Square, just down the street here. And the first Vincent Chin civil rights case was 3 blocks away at the U.S. Federal District Courthouse. And ironically, today's rally is being held at Hart Plaza, which was designed by Osamu Noguchi, a world-renowned designer. And you can see this building here, Fifth Third, was designed by Yamasaki, world-renowned architect. And I was mentioning to people, if you look at the design of this building, it's a prototype for the Twin Towers in New York. Same structure, same design. And it's ironic we're here at this point in time, and yet you're still targeted. For all of you, thank you for coming out, remembering your prayers and thoughts, the victims in Atlanta. Peace to you all, never again. At this point, I've been asked to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Sharon Dow. She is the chair of the, I make the right pronunciation, Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission for the state of Michigan. So Sharon, please come up, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you all. This is Sharon Dow, Commissioner of the Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission. We were here last year and again be here today to mark the first anniversary of the Atlantic spark killings. Asian American women are impacted by the anti-Asian hate very badly. According to the Stop AAPI hate, it shows that the 73% of these reports were done by women. I have one example to share. This is one of my best friends. She was one of the very first and very few cases being reported when pandemic started back in 2020. And this is what happened to her. The first time, she was hacked at the Zoom session in early 2020. Now the second time, someone broke the studio window in 2020. The third time, someone went into her studio room and yelled to her, and that was in 2020. The fourth time, someone called her and told her to get out of the country. That was in 2021. The fifth time, someone called her again, told her that she's racist and get out of the country as soon as possible. And this just happened last month, February in 2022. So we feel that the situation is not getting too much better. How are we going to bring the awareness to the public to the issue? How about, you're thinking, how about the first one? Let's remember the names of the 6 Asian ladies in Atlanta. The second, we need to learn the history and act so that history will not repeat again. We have been sexualized and discriminated. From day one, we are here in the country. We have to stop the racist terminology. So sadly, those 6 ladies in Atlanta, they cannot be with us together, do the thing. But we have to do it. Just stand up against the racism and injustice. We have to help create a more just society. So today, let's continue getting together to stop Asian hate. How about that? Thank you. Thank you. Next, I want to bring our Curtis from APIA Vote to share his words. Curtis.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming here. As mentioned, I'm Curtis, and I'm a field manager with APIA Vote Michigan. I want to thank everyone, our audience, our speakers, our partnering organizations, and our friends that helped put this visual today, or together, for joining us today. We're here to reflect on the tragedy that occurred in Atlanta last year. That tragedy is a reminder that as much as we can, that we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay vigilant for those that have suffered gender-based violence, for Asian American women, and for all marginalized communities. We have to stay vigilant so that we prevent these tragedies from happening again as much as possible. We have to get down for each other. We have to stand together and support each other. And when I look at the crowd and all the folks that helped us organize this event, and I see people of all races and all backgrounds here with us today, it gives me hope that we can all unite together and take a stand against injustices of all types, whether it's against the Asian community, the Black community, and all marginalized communities. And with that in mind, I want to give a special shout out to all the organizations and folks that have partnered with us and are standing here with us today. I do apologize if we've missed anyone here, as we've had a wealth of organizations that have been so supportive. But with that in mind, I want to thank each of them, starting with the City of Detroit for always accommodating us. I want to thank American Citizens for Justice, Michigan United, Michigan Voices, the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, the North American Chinese Coalition, Whenever We're Needed, the Center for Health Disparities, Innovations and Studies at Eastern Michigan University, APIA News Network / Dragon Eagle TV, Detroit Change Initiative, Rising Voices, the Jury Media, AAPI Voice, Michigan Roundtable, Femmes for Change, the Korean American Cultural Center of Michigan, Global Detroit, Welcoming Michigan, the Chaldean Community Foundation, the African Bureau for Immigration and Social Affairs, the BISA, the Association of Chinese Americans, U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai, all our staff and board members at API Vote Michigan, and to all of the numerous speakers and individuals that supported this event. And again, thank you to our audience members for being here. Thank you. If everyone that spoke today and is involved in the event can come up so we can take a picture. Please.
Take picture with him.
It's not terrible.
We also get the
Oh, you mean only because I did run Everyone, can I get everyone's attention over here? All right, here we go. Dang, y'all look good.